Hey, internet guy. Straightened out here, and my connection is lousy. Hello, everybody. Patty. How you doing? Michael Mace. Hello. Good to see you. Hello, Mark. I don't stream, or I haven't been streaming on a regular basis. That's about to change, though. Okay. And if you don't know the paper bag trick, internet god, um, let me know, and I'll tell you what to do to prevent those wasp nests. Carla Marie, where's strawberry tea? Excuse me. I was up all night and now I've been up all day. Hopefully, I'll be able to get some sleep here in a little bit. I um I don't know if any of you went to my community page, or even if you did, if you could see the message because it was for members. Um, the reason I'm doing this tonight is to sort of test the waters. Um, I'm going to be changing what I do on my channel. Um, to be perfectly honest, listening to these frauditors and sovsits and having to comb through their videos to find, the juicy bits, evidently was triggering anxiety in me that I didn't know I had. And it got to the point where I didn't see that my videos were even watched much, to tell you the truth. Um, I didn't feel like I was making any kind of a difference. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to change up. I think I'm going to try to do one of my psychoanalyses videos like once a month. But other than that, I'm going to do live streams like this. Um, and what I'm thinking of is I'd like this channel to be a place where we just have fun. I'm going to be showing videos of like trivia quizzes and true crime, different things that interest me that hopefully will interest you too. Thank you, Michael. That's why I'm doing this. Hey, Doug. Shut up, Doug. So, anyway, I'm going to test the waters with this. So, you guys let me know what you think. You're fine, Asa. I just started. Hey, strawberry tea. Okay, let me get started here. See if I can do this smoothly. Well, not as smoothly as I would like. I changed internet providers, and that seems to have been a
50
mistake.
general knowledge questions. 10 seconds per question. Good luck. What's
Sorry.
the world's most popular pet? Dogs, cats, or birds?
Stop that. We will go back to the beginning. Okay.
50 general knowledge questions. 10 seconds per question. Good luck. What's the world's most popular pet? Dogs?
Hey,
cats, or
Combat.
birds?
Thank you for coming by. They indicate the correct answer, but they don't
Which
say
city
it.
is known as?
I wish they did.
the city New York, of love.
New York,
Tokyo.
Paris, or Tokyo?
What is the main flavor of tiramisu?
What is the main flavor
Lemon,
of tiramisu?
coffee,
Lemon,
or coconut?
coffee, or coconut?
The moose is considered a symbol of which country? Greenland, Finland, or Canada?
Finland or Canada?
Do moose live in Greenland?
In bingo slang,
Bingo
what
slang,
number is
what number
cup of
is
tea?
cup of tea?
Number 3,
Number
23,
23,
or 33?
or 33?
What is hair made from?
What is
Collagen,
hair made from?
keratin,
Collagen,
or argan?
keratin, or argan?
What name is given to the large depression formed when a volcano erupts and collapses? Caldera, conduit, or chamber?
Conduit or chamber?
Who wrote the Jungle Book?
Who
Lewis
wrote the
Carroll,
Jungle Book?
Rudyard
Lewis Carroll,
Kipling, or
Rudyard
Charles Dickens?
Kipling, or Charles Dickens?
Who has the biggest air force
Hey,
in the
Huey.
world?
Biggest
The
air
US,
force in the
China,
world? The
or
US,
Russia?
China, or Russia?
In which city was John Lennon
Which
shot
city
and
was
killed?
John Lennon
Los
shot and
Angeles,
killed?
Chicago,
Los Angeles,
or New York?
Chicago, or New York?
What breed of cat is
What
this?
breed of cat
British
is
Shorthair,
this? British
Burmese,
Shorthair,
or a Savannah?
Burmese, or a Savannah?
I had no idea on this one.
In Greek mythology, who was the first woman on
who
Earth?
was the first woman
Athena,
on Earth?
Pandora,
Athena,
or Eve?
Pandora, or Eve?
How many places in the US?
How many places in the US
named
are named
Santa Claus?
Santa Claus?
None,
None,
one, or
one,
three.
or three?
What is this bird species
What is
called?
this bird
a crow,
species
a
called?
magpie,
Crow,
or a
a
jay?
magpie, or a jay?
In which Disney film is the
Which
song
Disney film is
When
the
You
song
Wish Upon a Star?
When You Wish Upon a
Fantasia,
Star?
Pinocchio,
Fantasia,
or Cinderella?
Pinocchio, or Cinderella?
What is the largest
What is the
country in
largest
Africa?
country in
Algeria,
Africa?
Libya, or
Algeria,
Angola?
Libya, or Angola?
What is the world's hottest
What
chili
is the
pepper?
world's
Scotch
hottest
bonnet,
chili pepper?
ghost pepper,
Scotch
or
bonnet,
Carolina
ghost
Reaper?
pepper, or Carolina Reaper?
I'd never heard of those peppers until I started hanging out here on YouTube. People
Where
are
is this
crazy.
monument?
Where is
Paris,
this monument?
London, or
Paris,
Cairo?
London, or Cairo?
What is the furthest man-made
What is the
object from the
furthest
Earth?
man-made object
Pioneer
from the
5,
Earth?
Voyager
Pioneer
1,
5,
or a
Voyager
Tesla car?
1, or a Tesla car?
Which European city is served
Which
by the
European
George
city
Best
is served
Airport?
by the George
Belfast,
Best Airport?
Manchester, or
Belfast,
Dublin?
Manchester, or Dublin?
Where can you find the Sea of
Where can you
Tranquility?
find the Sea of
Caribbean,
Tranquility?
the Moon,
Caribbean,
or
the
Antarctica?
Moon, or Antarctica?
Which vitamin is routinely
Which
given to
vitamin is
newborn
routinely given
babies?
to newborn
A,
babies?
D,
A,
or K?
D, or K?
Which beer's slogan is
Which
King
beer's
of
slogan
Beers?
is King of
Heineken,
Beers?
Red Stripe,
Heineken,
or
Red
Budweiser?
Stripe, or Budweiser?
What is this vegetable called?
What is this
An
vegetable
artichoke,
called?
okra,
Artichoke,
or fennel?
okra, or fennel?
Okra. It ain't okra. Okra.
What is the capital of Argentina?
What is the capital
Santiago,
of Argentina?
Santa Cruz,
Santiago,
or Buenos
Santa
Aires?
Cruz, or Buenos Aires?
Hey, Ziggy. Didn't see you sneak in. Thanks for coming by.
Which spice comes from a crocus?
Which spice comes from a crocus?
Saffron,
Allspice,
or mace?
saffron, or mace?
What number is
What
considered
number is
lucky in
considered
China?
lucky in
7,
China?
8,
7,
or 13?
8, or 13?
What was the first vegetable
What was
grown
the
in
first
space?
vegetable grown in space?
Potato, a carrot,
Potato,
or an onion?
a carrot, or an onion?
What is used to measure wind
What is
speed?
used to
A
measure wind
barometer,
speed?
a pyrometer, or
a pyrometer,
an anemometer?
or an anemometer?
What is the only animal from which
What
the
is the
male
only
gives
animal
birth?
from which the male gives
Dolphins,
birth?
seahorses,
Dolphins,
or penguins?
seahorses.
That's a very popular question on these quiz videos.
Mel B and Mel C were members
Mel
of
B
which
and Mel
girl
C
group?
were members
Little
of
Mix,
which girl group?
TLC,
Little Mix,
or Spice Girls?
TLC, or Spice Girls?
Which element is represented
Which
by the
element
symbol
is represented
W?
by the symbol
Sodium,
W?
tungsten, or
Sodium,
potassium?
tungsten, or potassium?
Which famous musician's mum
Which
had a
famous
cat
musician's
called
mum
Elvis?
had a cat
Johnny
called
Cash,
Elvis?
Elvis
Johnny
Presley,
Cash,
or John Lennon?
Elvis Presley, or John Lennon?
Who was Hercules' father?
Who was Hercules'
Perseus,
father?
Zeus,
Perseus,
or
Zeus,
Apollo?
or Apollo?
Which fruit is Seville
Which
in
fruit
Spain
is
famous
Seville
for?
in Spain
Oranges,
famous for?
grapes, or
Oranges,
apricot?
grapes, or apricot?
In which year did humans first
Which
walk
year
on the
did
moon?
humans first walk on the moon?
1968, 1969, or
1969 or
1972?
1972?
Which country is the
Which
band
country is the
U2
band
from?
U2
England,
from?
Scotland,
England,
or Ireland?
Scotland, or Ireland?
Which fast food chain has
Which
the
fast
most
food
outlets
chain
in the
has the
world?
most
Subway,
outlets in the world?
KFC,
Subway,
or McDonald's?
KFC, or McDonald's?
This one surprised me.
Which sign of the zodiac is
Which sign of the
represented by a
zodiac
bull?
is represented
Aries,
by a bull?
Virgo, or Taurus?
Aries, Virgo, or Taurus?
Which UK city is served by
Which
the
UK
John Lennon
city is
Airport?
served by the John
London,
Lennon Airport?
Liverpool,
London,
or Newcastle?
Liverpool, or Newcastle?
How many compartments
How
does a
many
cow's stomach
compartments does a
have?
cow's
1,
stomach have?
2, or 4?
1, 2, or 4?
Which singer sang Born
Which
in the
singer
USA?
sang
Bruce
Born in the
Springsteen,
USA?
Billy
Bruce
Joel,
Springsteen,
or Tom
Billy
Petty?
Joel?
Hey, Simon. Haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for coming by. We're just shooting the shit and playing.
Which country was the
Which
first to
country
allow
was
Trivia
the first
games.
to allow
India,
women to vote?
New Zealand,
India,
or Austria?
New Zealand, or Austria?
Who co-founded
Who
Microsoft with Bill
co-founded
Gates?
Microsoft with
Steve
Bill
Jobs,
Gates?
Larry
Steve
Page,
Jobs,
or Paul
Larry
Allen?
Page, or Paul Allen?
In which US state is Jack
In
Daniels
which US
made?
state is
Kentucky,
Jack Daniels
Tennessee,
made? Kentucky,
or Louisiana?
Tennessee, or Louisiana?
Where is Black Forest Gâteau
Where is
originally
Black
from?
Forest
Germany,
Gâteau
France,
originally
or
from?
Italy?
Germany, France, or Italy?
In which year did the
Which
First
year
World
did the
War end?
First World War end?
1917,
1917,
1918, or
1918, or
1919?
1919?
What nationality was the
What
aviator
nationality
Amelia
was the
Earhart?
aviator Amelia Earhart?
British, American,
British,
or Canadian?
American, or Canadian?
What is the name of the
What
Japanese
is the
beef
name of the
considered to
Japanese
make
beef
the best steak?
considered to make the
Wagyu,
best steak?
nori, or
Wagyu,
udon?
nori, or udon?
What of baby alpaca
What of
called?
baby alpaca
Lambs,
called?
cria,
Lambs,
or kids?
cria, or kids?
Hey, I hope you really enjoyed
Hey, I
that.
hope you
Don't
really
forget to
enjoyed that.
subscribe
Don't
and
forget
like.
to
And now
subscribe and
try this
like.
next quiz.
And now try this next quiz.
Alrighty. So what'd you think? Was I know that StreamYard. Whoops. Wait, what is that? I don't know what that was. I have no idea what that was. Damn it. Stop
What are
it.
the cells that are part of your immune system and help fight infections called? Are they us?
Sorry about that. Okay, you tell me. Do you want more trivia? Or would you like to go on to true crime? Yeah, it's always nice to get them right. Oh, I knew that would come from you, Combat. Yes, I love to feel stupid. Maybe we can go back and forth. Enzo, hi there. Thanks for coming by. Can we send out what? Trivandrum? Alrighty then. This guy has a weird cadence to his voice, but I've watched several of his videos and it's it gets at first it's annoying and then it gets charming. It's like nobody narrates these type of videos like this guy. So let's see what we could do here. Oh, thank you. That's what I'm shooting for. I don't know if it'll ever get there, but oh, strawberry tea, good. I'm glad you watched them too. It gives me a little faith in myself. All right, let's see. Where was I? Get it together.
Today we are looking at a case from the first part of the 18th century. So sit back as we go to England. Sarah Malcolm was born in 1711 in the English county of Durham. Her parents were a respectable couple, and the family lived in a nice house. They're often seen in places that were frequented by the more well-to-do members of local society. Although education was not compulsory, Sarah was sent to school, where she was not only taught to read and write, she also learned the social graces. She was considered proper for a young lady in the early 18th century. However, her father was not good. And eventually the family found themselves in unfortunate financial circumstances. So much so they left England, moved to Ireland. They settled in Dublin. When Sarah was around 20 years old, the family moved to London to work in domestic service. She was a hard worker. Performed her duties well. But London was very different to the life the family had lived in Durham. London was a dirty, noisy and overcrowded city. The population of around 650,000, the majority of who lived in very poor conditions. Many families lived in just one room. The infant mortality rate was also very high. Out of every 1,000 babies born in London, nearly half had died by their second birthday, mainly due to malnutrition.
You want me to restart it or just take it up from here? Oh, okay. All right.
Nutrition, dirty drinking water, and poor hygiene. It was not only the young that were susceptible to these conditions. A few months after arriving in London, Sarah's mother died. Her father then returned to Dublin, leaving young Sarah alone in the city. She managed to find another position in a pub called the Black Horse, which was in Boswell Courts, near Temple Bar. This was the area that in the Middle Ages was the principal ceremonial entrance to the City of London from the City of Westminster. However, in the 1730s, it was often frequented by some of the more undesirable members of local society. Not long after, she secured a better position, working as a laundress for some of the apartments above the Inns of Courts. This was a group of 4 institutions that have historically been responsible for legal education, and their respective governing bodies, the benches, have the exclusive rights of admitting persons to practice law by a formal call to the bar. This enables the newly qualified barrister to be allowed to argue in courts on behalf of another party. One of the gentlemen who occupied an apartment was a young Irishman named Mr. Carroll. Another was a lady who was believed to be in her 80s. She was a widow, named Mrs. Lydia Duncombe. Her husband had worked as a law stationer. They both occupied apartments in Tanfield Courts. Mrs. Duncombe lived with her companion, a lady named Elizabeth Harrison. Miss Harrison was about 60 years of age and had worked for Mrs. Duncombe for many years. However, she was suffering from ill health and could no longer act as housekeeper. She would spend most of the day in her bed or sitting in the chair, complaining about her many ailments. Sarah would clean Mrs. Duncombe's apartments and do her laundry, but eventually Mrs. Duncombe decided that she would prefer to have a live-in maid, so dispensed with the services of Sarah and employed a young lady named Miss Anne Price, who was about 17 years old. Whilst working at the Black Horse public house, Sarah made the acquaintance of a lady named Miss Martha Tracy and 2 young men, brothers, James and Thomas Alexander. They did not always live by honest means, and knowing that Sarah had access to the apartments of some fairly well-off people, tried to encourage her to steal from them. After all, she was poor, and they would not miss a few coins or pieces of jewellery that were just kept in a box. On the 3rd of February 1733, Sarah paid a visit to Mrs. Duncombe. She told the elderly lady that she had heard that she had been not in good spirits and just wanted to make sure that everything was in order. Sarah also observed that Miss Harrison was still not well. Miss Anne Price, however, had her doubts that Sarah had really come to the apartment just to inquire about the health of Mrs. Duncombe and wondered why she had really taken the time to visit. On the 5th of February 1733, a lady named Mrs. Love walked through the narrow passage into Tanfield Courts. It was just after 1 o'clock, and her business was both charitable and social. She was going to lunch at the apartment of her friend Mrs. Lydia Duncombe, who lived on the 3rd floor. Mrs. Love was also elderly, but in good health. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs and made her way to Mrs. Duncombe's apartment. She noticed that the outer door was closed. This was quite strange. Usually, the outer door would only be closed if the occupants were not inside the property, and definitely not closed if they were expecting a visitor. The last time she had seen her friend, Mrs. Lydia Duncombe, she had noticed that the old lady had been quite despondent. She had even mentioned that she may not be around for much longer, and had expressed her concern about the health of Miss Elizabeth Harrison. Mrs. Love remembered that on the day she had last seen Miss Duncombe, 2 other visitors had also come to the apartments, neither of whom had managed to raise her spirits. One of the visitors was Sarah Malcolm, who Mrs. Love knew from the time when Miss Malcolm was employed to clean for Mrs. Duncombe. Mrs. Love continued to knock at the door. She also called out, but there was no response. She stayed outside for quite a while, believing that maybe Mrs. Duncombe and Miss Harrison were unable to come to the door, and that Miss Anne Price had gone on an errand and would soon return. However, she noticed that there was no noise at all coming from inside the apartment, and with each minute that passed, she was becoming increasingly more anxious. Thoughts started to come to her head. Could Miss Harrison have died during the night, and Miss Price then assisting Mrs. Duncombe in going to inform the necessary authorities? Eventually, Mrs. Love decided to go downstairs to try and find out if anyone knew the whereabouts of her friend. She knew that for many years, Mrs. Duncombe had been friendly with a lady named Mrs. Rymer. When Mrs. Love told her that no one was home at Mrs. Duncombe's apartments, Mrs. Rymer became quite concerned. She found it quite peculiar that there could be no one home. She immediately accompanied Mrs. Love back upstairs. They knocked on the door, but there was no response, and there was no noise at all coming from inside the property. They looked down into the courtyard to see if there may be anyone who could help. Mrs. Love saw Miss Sarah Malcolm and called down to her. She asked her to fetch a locksmith. Sarah called back that she would make haste and fetch help. She returned with Mrs. Oliphant and told the 2 ladies that Mrs. Oliphant would try and get into the property, as she had been unable to locate a locksmith. By now, both Mrs. Love and Mrs. Rymer were becoming increasingly more worried, and Mrs. Love, in a panic, sobbingly said, "I do believe they're all dead, and the locksmith has not come." Mrs. Oliphant was much younger than Mrs. Love and Mrs. Rymer, and was a very resourceful woman. She had the key to the recently vacated apartment next to Mrs. Duncombe's residence. She said that she would climb out of the window at the back of the adjacent apartment and try to enter Mrs. Duncombe's property. The 3 other ladies waited outside. They heard the sound of breaking glass, so presumed that Mrs. Oliphant had managed to enter the apartment. A few moments later, Mrs. Oliphant appeared at the front door. She looked at the 3 ladies and, standing in the corridor, solemnly said, "They're all murdered." The ladies entered the apartment. The first body they saw was that of young Miss Price. She lay in her bed with a deep knife wound to her throat. Her hair covered her face and was red with blood. They then came across Miss Elizabeth Harrison. She had been strangled with her apron strings. Finally, they saw the body of Mrs. Lydia Duncombe. She was lying on her bed. There was no blood, and it looked like the cause of her death had been strangulation. The authorities were contacted, and a surgeon named Mr. Thomas Bigg arrived. He had been fetched by one of the porters. He examined the 3 dead ladies, but it was evident what the motive had been for this most horrible of crimes. A strong box had been opened and its contents removed. Mrs. Rymer knew that this was where Mrs. Duncombe kept her money and her jewellery. 2 young barristers named Mr. Geargan and Mr. Carroll occupied apartments on the same floor as Mrs. Duncombe, and both gentlemen employed Miss Sarah Malcolm as their laundress. They had been out, but as they tried to return to their residence, they discovered a large crowd had gathered by the entrance to Tanfield Court. This made it very difficult to pass. News of the murder had already spread, and people had descended on the area to see what they may be able to find out. Instead of trying to push through the crowds, the 2 gentlemen went to a coffee house in Covent Garden. They could hear people talking about the murders, and the theory was mentioned that it must have been committed by someone who was familiar with Tanfield Court, as it was not the easiest place for anyone to find their way around. The perpetrator probably would have known the victims and probably had access to the property, as no sign of a break-in had been detected. Still talking about the murders, Mr. Geargan and Mr. Carroll went on to a tavern in Essex Street, not leaving until 1 o'clock in the morning. When they arrived back at their apartments, they found that Mr. Carroll's door was open. There was also a fire burning and a candle on the table. Sitting by the fire was Miss Sarah Malcolm. The young man asked what she was doing in his apartment at such an hour. She replied that she was making the fire and collecting some things. Mr. Carroll then asked if anyone had been arrested for the murder of the 3 ladies. Sarah looked up and replied that a gentleman named Mr. Knight, who had an apartment in the building but had not been seen for 2 or 3 days, was suspected of it. Mr. Carroll then told Sarah that until this business is sorted, she should not be seen in his apartment and asked her to leave. However, before she did, he realised that some of his waistcoats were missing. When he questioned her, she told him that she had pawned them. After Sarah had left, Mr. Carroll made a further inspection of his things. He found linen, along with a silver tankard that had blood on the handle. Under the beds, he found a blood-stained apron. He fetched the watchman, who located Miss Malcolm and escorted her back to Mr. Carroll's 3rd floor apartments. Mr. Carroll asked the young lady if the tankard belonged to her. She replied that it did, and that it had been given to her by her mother. She said that she planned to pawn it, and that there was blood on the handle, as she had cut her finger. She was taken by the watchman to the constable, where she repeated the statement under oath in front of the alderman, Sir Richard Brockus. He declared that she should be sent to Newgate Prison while investigations continued. When she arrived there, she was searched. A green silk purse containing 21 guineas was found in her dress. When questioned, Sarah declared that she had found the purse in the streets. The 2 bundles of linen that she had been carrying were bloodstained. Mrs. Rymer was shown the purse, but was unable to swear that it had been in Mrs. Duncombe's safe box. The tankard, however, was engraved with the initials CD, and Mrs. Rymer was able to confirm that it had belonged to Mrs. Duncombe. The linen was darned and was identified to have been the property of the old lady. The warder in charge of Miss Sarah Malcolm was named Mr. Roger Johnson. He had been the person who had searched her. Sarah offered him the 21 guineas if he did not mention the money to the magistrates. However, Mr. Johnson was an honest gentleman and rejected her attempt to bribe him.
Yeah, Asa, that's a really
She told him
good
that she had
story.
not murdered the 3 ladies. She claimed that all she had done was organise a robbery, and throughout she stayed outside on the stairs keeping lookouts, while Martha Tracy and the Alexander brothers entered the apartments. She claimed to have had no knowledge that they planned to commit the murders. Nevertheless, at the coroner's inquest, it was decided that Miss Sarah Malcolm was responsible for the deaths of Mrs. Lydia Duncombe, Miss Elizabeth Harrison, and Miss Anne Price, and she was committed to trial. The trial began at the Old Bailey on the 23rd of February 1733, and like most trials at the time, was a sensational affair. Some people were able to enter the courtroom, but the rest had to wait patiently in the streets outside, as news of the proceeding was relayed to them from inside the courts. Although there had been 3 murders and a robbery, all of which carried the sentence of death, it was decided that in order to save time, Miss Malcolm would only be tried on the charge of the murder of Miss Anne Price. Sarah was not represented by any legal counsel, but in court managed to equip herself well. Many women who had worked in domestic service in the first part of the 18th century were illiterates, but Sarah's good education enabled her to put up a well-prepared defence. She reiterated that she had only assisted in planning the robbery and acknowledged that the punishment for this crime would be death, but she denied that she had committed murder and claimed that she did not know the 3 ladies were dead until Mrs. Oliphant had entered the apartment and discovered the bodies. She claimed that the blood on her linen had been her own menstrual blood and not from the terrible attack on Miss Anne Price. This caused a stir in the courts, as it was not considered proper to speak so openly about such things, especially in the presence of ladies. Prosecution witnesses included both Mr. Geargan and Mr. Carroll, as well as the 2 watchmen and Mrs. Rymer. The trial lasted for 5 hours. The evidence against Miss Malcolm seemed quite conclusive. The blood on the handle of the tankard, her clothing and linen sheets, and the fact that she had also paid a visit to Mrs. Duncombe's apartment, claiming to be worried about the health of the old lady, when she had more likely gone there to make sure that Mrs. Duncombe kept her money and jewellery in the same place. The jury took only 15 minutes to find the defendant, Miss Sarah Malcolm, guilty, and the judge sentenced her to death. She was taken to Newgate Prison, where she awaited her fate. Whilst there, she was visited by the artist, Mr. William Hogarth, who painted her portrait. This was then printed in many publications, and the infamy of the crime and of Miss Sarah Malcolm grew. The date for the execution was Wednesday, the 7th of March. The portable gallows were erected in the square opposite Mitra Court, near Fetter Lane in Fleet Street. It was customary at the time for the authorities to conduct the hanging as near as they were able to the place where the crime had been committed. Sarah was placed in a cart and taken from Newgate Prison to Fleet Street, accompanied by soldiers and the undersheriff. She was very concerned that she was going to be hanged so close to the place where she lived, which meant that it would be witnessed by friends and neighbours. She was very emotional during the short journey, weeping, and is also said to have fainted. At the gallows, prayers were said for her. She then turned and faced the large and noisy crowd. She shouted that her employer, Mr. Carroll, knew nothing of her intentions of the robbery and of the terrible deeds that followed. She then said that she had given the Reverend Pennington a letter in which she related everything that she had to say about the crime. She then said again that she only acted as a lookout and had not committed this most brutal act. The cart on which she was standing then moved forward, and Sarah Malcolm was hanged. She was buried 3 days later in the churchyard of St. Sepulchre. The authorities had no evidence against Martha Tracy and the Alexander brothers, and charges were never brought against them regarding the deaths of Mrs. Lydia Duncombe, Miss Elizabeth Harrison, and Miss Anne Price.
All righty. See what I mean about the cadence of his voice? But like I said, it gets charming. All right. Now that's pronounced Lester. Asa, is that right? I bet they never did get over it. And that was a breakthrough case. You're right. All right. I'm going to do a quiz. Yeah. Thank you, Simon. I think I'm going to do this one. This is interesting. I remember Robin Williams saying, if you can remember the 60s, you weren't really there. Well, Asa, I've always wondered, there's, I don't know if it's Cambridge or Oxford, there's a Magdalen College, and it's actually spelled Magdalene, and I've never understood how that happened. No, that's not right. Hang on, this is wrong. Come on, do it correctly. Nope. Okay, well, we're going to try this anyway. Yeah, it's fascinating.
What was the name of the German Air Force in World War II? Was it the Luftwaffe, Reichstag, or Acton? And it was the Luftwaffe. Golda Meir was the Prime Minister of which Middle Eastern country? Syria, Israel, or Jordan? And the answer is Israel. Which international honour was first awarded in 1901? The Pulitzer, Booker, or Nobel Prize? And the answer is Nobel Prize. What was Queen Victoria's husband called? Was he King Albert, Prince Albert, or Duke Albert? And he was Prince Albert. In 1916, Jeanette Rankin became the first woman to do what? Be elected to Congress, fly across the Atlantic, or vote in the UK? And it is to be elected to Congress. What was found in the Lascaux caves in southwestern France in 1940? Prehistoric paintings, Egyptian hieroglyphs, or the Rosetta Stone? And it was prehistoric paintings. Which African city was known during colonial times as Leopoldville? Cairo, Dakar, or Kinshasa? And the answer is Kinshasa. What killed Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan in 1521? Was it plague, a poison arrow, or a shipwreck? And it was a poison arrow. In what year were the 6 colonies joined to create the Commonwealth of Australia? 1751, 1901, or 1931? And it was in 1901. Which country did Austria declare war on to begin World War I? Was it Serbia, Russia, or France?
Oh, Myra Hindley. Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it was Serbia. Who founded Western Europe's first empire after the fall of Rome? Was it Frederick the Great, Charlemagne, or Louis XIV? And it was Charlemagne. What was Nelson Mandela's original sentence following his 1964 conviction in South Africa? Was it 10 years in prison, 25 years in prison, or life in prison? And it was life in prison. Where were chariot races held in ancient Rome? In the Colosseum, Pantheon, or Circus Maximus? And they were in the Circus Maximus. Alfred Zimmermann sent a note asking which country to ally with Germany in a war against the United States: Japan, Mexico, or Russia? And it was to Mexico. Who discovered radioactivity? Was it Henry Becquerel, Marie Curie, or Ernest Rutherford? And it was Henry Becquerel. What country first used fingerprint evidence? The USA, India, or Argentina? And it was Argentina. In 1783, the Montgolfier brothers were credited with which invention? Was it the hot air balloon, flush toilet, or submarine? And it was the hot air balloon. What was a Benedictine monk allowed to own? His clothing, his Bible, or nothing? And the answer is nothing. With what Russian spacecraft did the Space Shuttle Atlantis dock in 1995? Was it with Mir, Vostok 1, or Soyuz 11? And it was Mir. Which of these African nations disintegrated into a violent civil war in the 1990s? South Africa, Rwanda, or Tunisia? And it was Rwanda. The Library of Alexandria, Egypt, was accidentally burned by Julius Caesar in which year? 48 BC, 210 BC, or 82 AD? And it was in 48 BC. In which state did Martin Luther King help organize the 1955-56 bus boycott? Louisiana, Alabama, or Georgia? And it was in Alabama. Where is this, the third oldest astronomical clock in the world and the oldest still in operation? Berlin, London, or Prague? And it's in Prague. Mary Tudor married Philip II of what country? Spain, Germany, or France?
Hey, Joshua!
And the answer is Spain. Who did the sporting events of the ancient Olympics honour? Was it Athena, Zeus, or Apollo?
Shelley, hi. Glad you've
And
joined
it
us.
was Zeus. In which Arab country was a Spanish protectorate established in 1912? Libya, Egypt, or Morocco? And the answer is Morocco. What is the name of the great 12th century temple found in Cambodia? The Forbidden City, Angkor Wat, or Khmer Rouge? And it is Angkor Wat. What was the nickname of German Field Marshal Rommel? The Desert Fox, Rat, or Snake? And he was the Desert Fox. Which US president won a Pulitzer Prize? Barack Obama, Donald Trump, or John F. Kennedy? And it was John F. Kennedy. What did Karl Marx say was the opium of the people? Love, fear, or religion? And the answer is religion. What country did King Farouk rule from 1936 to 52? Egypt, Iran, or Sudan? And it was Egypt. Which world leader was assassinated by members of her bodyguard in 1984? Indira Gandhi, Eva Peron, or Golda Meir? And it was Indira Gandhi. Ferdinand Magellan discovered the Philippines in 1521 for what country? Portugal, Spain, or Italy? And it was for Spain. What was the spoken language of the Incas?
Hey, Sean.
Incan, Peruvian, or Quechua? And it was Quechua. What are the Olmecs best known for creating? Huge stone heads, Machu Picchu, or a 12-month calendar? And the answer is huge stone heads. Which two European nations dissolved their union in June 1905? East and West Germany, Czechia and Slovakia, or Norway and Sweden? And the answer is Norway and Sweden. 1909 saw the start of the Japanese occupation of which nearby nation? China, Vietnam, or Korea? And the answer is Korea. Who authored the Republic around 375 BC? Was it Socrates, Plato, or Aristotle? And it was Plato. Geronimo was a leader of which Native American tribe? The Apache, Mohawk, or Cherokee? And it was the Apache. What country was known as Siam until 1949? Myanmar, Bhutan, or Thailand? And it was Thailand. Okay, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you
Alrighty. Council Estate Bird. I'm reading your answers, goofball. Anyway, here's the video that I wanted to show. I somehow mixed it up. But Robin Williams said, if you remember the 60s, you weren't there. I was a kid, so it doesn't much matter.
What is the name of the 1960 Hitchcock film featuring a famous shower scene? Is it The Birds, Vertigo, or Psycho?
Karen.
Why was boxing legend Muhammad Ali sentenced to 5 years in jail in 1967? Was it for assault, for refusing draft, or for tax evasion? What is this classic 1960s Jaguar model called? Is it the F-Type, E-Type, or X-Type? Who is credited with popularizing the miniskirt in the 60s? Was it Mary Quant, Audrey Hepburn, or Jackie Kennedy? In which city did Martin Luther King Jr. deliver his 1963 I Have a Dream speech? Was it in New York, Memphis, or Washington?
Twiggy, you're right, Asa. You're right.
Who did Jack Ruby fatally shoot in 1963? Was it John Lennon, Lee Harvey Oswald, or John F. Kennedy? Popularized by Andy Warhol, what is this type of art known as? Is it Art Nouveau, abstract, or pop art? Made famous by the Beatles song, in which city is Penny Lane? Is it in London, Liverpool, or Dublin? And if you haven't already, Elvis says subscribe, and you can't argue with the king. Which 1969 film starred Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, and Jack Nicholson? Was it Easy Rider, The Wild Ride, or The Shooting? '60s fashion model Leslie Hornby was better known by what name? Was it Skinny, Twiggy, or Bony? Where was U2 spy plane pilot Francis Gary Powers shot down and captured? Was it in the Soviet Union, China, or Vietnam? The first James Bond film was released in 1962. What was it called? Was it Goldfinger, Thunderball, or Dr. No? What was introduced in 1960 and at first only available to married women? Was the contraceptive pill, an automatic washing machine, or miniskirts? Where did the hippie youth culture first originate? Was it in England, the US, or Germany? Live long and prosper is a famous line from which 1960s sci-fi TV series? Is it Lost in Space, Batman, or Star Trek? On April 12, 1961, who became the first man in space? Was it Neil Armstrong, Yuri Gagarin, or Buzz Aldrin? Fashionable in the 60s, what are these shaped trousers called? Are they bell bottoms, swingers, or high-rise? And Elvis is back again, and this time he says, if you're enjoying the video, please give it a like. Which 60s dance craze was started by Chubby Checker? Was it the locomotion, the swim, or the twist? In 1969, we landed on the moon, but how many days did the journey from Earth to the moon take? Was it a day, 4 days, or 12 days? Which 1964 film featured the line "Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious"? Was it My Fair Lady, Mary Poppins, or A Hard Day's Night? In March 1960, Elvis Presley returned to the US from military service. In which country? Was it Vietnam, Cuba, or Germany? Who was the last performer at the 1969 Woodstock Festival? Was it Jimi Hendrix, Joe Cocker, or Janis Joplin? In the 1963 film The Great Escape, who plays Danny, the Tunnel King? Is it Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, or Donald Pleasance? July 21st, 1960, the world's first female Prime Minister is elected. Where? Was it in New Zealand, the UK, or Sri Lanka? Which country was first to land a spacecraft on the moon? Was it the US, the Soviet Union, or China? The Beatles released 3 films in the 1960s: A Hard Day's Night, Help, and which other? Was it Yesterday, 8 Days a Week, or Yellow Submarine? In 1967, South African doctor Christian Barnard completed the first human transplant of which organ? Was it a heart, a lung, or a kidney? Fashionable in the mid-60s, what are these sweaters called? Are they crew necks, turkey necks, or turtlenecks? And I'd love to know what you thought was the worst fashion in the 60s. Let me know in the comments down below. In 1966, which country won the Football World Cup for the first time, but hopefully not the last time? Was it England, Germany, or Brazil? In which 1969 film were minis used to transfer stolen gold bars? Was it The Wild Bunch, The Italian Job, or Easy Rider? In the 60s, the vinyl LP gained popularity. But what does LP stand for? Is it listen please, long playing, or lasting performance? The Beverly Hillbillies TV show started in 1962. How had they made their fortune? Was it from stock market investment, they won the lottery, or they discovered oil? What was this 1960s hairdo known as? Was it a beehive, balayage, or a bird's nest? And let us know in the comments if you ever had that hairstyle. Which car manufacturer won every 24 hours of Le Mans race from 1960 to 1965? Was it Ford, Ferrari, or Porsche? Which iconic 1965 song starts, "Once upon a time you dressed so fine"? Is it Help Me Rhonda, Like a Rolling Stone, or California Girls? August 1968 saw the Warsaw Pact invasion of which country? Was it Poland, Yugoslavia, or Czechoslovakia?
Glad you're here.
In 1963, the UK agreed to buy Polaris from the US. But what was Polaris? Was it a computer, a missile system, or submarines? Where was Che Guevara captured and executed in 1967? Was it in Bolivia, Cuba, or Puerto Rico? July 20th, 1969, the Apollo 11 lunar module landed on the moon. What was the module called? Was it Snoopy, Eagle, or Aquarius? An icon of the Vietnam War, what nickname was given to the UH-1 helicopter? Was it a Huey, a Dewey, or a Louie? And there's bonus points if you can tell me who those characters are. Don't forget to give this video a like, and do you remember the 60s? What was the best and worst about it? Let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.
Well, I'm old. I knew all of those. And you're right, the thin years. I wish I were as fat now as I thought I was when I was 18. Yeah. Well, my sister wore that hairdo, not me. I was the hippie in the family. Correct, Joshua, correct. Okay. I'm going to play one more true crime video. And then for today, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm hoping to do this twice a week. But at this point in time, I'm not exactly sure what dates or times. I'm trying to feel that out. So I'll tell you what, if you guys will put in the chat what day or what time of day, like morning or evening or night, that you would like to see these videos, let me know so I get some kind of idea what you want? Yeah, I can believe that, Karen. All right, hold on. Let's see what we can find here. Okay, I'm going to play this one. It's about 15 minutes long. And we'll see what this is all about.
Kilkenny is a
Hey,
small
Pat.
medieval city in the southeast of Ireland with a population of just over 26,000 people.
Shuck the
It is
monkey.
also known as the Marble City. It is a high tourist area, and while it's famous for its beer, castle, tower, and cathedrals, among the locals of Ireland, it's most famous for its hurling, and we are affectionately called the Kilkenny Cats. Just 30 minutes south of Kilkenny is a village called Windgap, and its biggest claim to fame is George Clooney, whose ancestral family hails from Knockeen, Windgap. But the family we are going to be talking about today is one of tragedy and murder, the Whelan family. On Christmas morning 2008, 30-year-old Sharon and her two daughters, Zara, 7, and Nadine, 2, were found dead in their farmhouse on the outskirts of Windgap. On discovery of their bodies, it was soon clear that this was no accident. Here is the story of a mother and her children on what was to be the most precious of days, full of fun and excitement of any child's Christmas morning, turned into a horror story that to this day still haunts their immediate family, friends, and the community. While there is not a lot of information about Sharon's early life before she joined the Whelan family when she was 4, I learned through her brother John's interviews that Sharon was one of 3 siblings that were adopted into his family by his parents, Christy and Nancy. Sharon was a kind and loyal friend, and you always knew where you stood. She wasn't afraid to speak her mind. She loved school and was a good pupil. She loved people and looking after them, so it wasn't a surprise she decided on a career in hospitality. Sharon was strong minded and always fun to be around, and worked very hard to get on in life. She did struggle in her early adulthood and had a few ups and downs, but when her girls came along, she was totally focused on them. They came first and foremost. Zara was 7.5, and that half was very important to her. She was full of beans and kept her grandparents on their toes. Christy, her grandfather, collected her every morning before school, and when there was a hurling or football match to get ready for, Zara was there to help lay the flags on the sidelines
Oh,
of the
Josh, I'm
pitch.
sorry.
They had long walks and would chat until the cows came home. She was well advanced in her years, and no subject she didn't have an opinion on. Her nanny did her hair every morning before school, and she once stated that Grandad was her taxi driver and Nanny was her hairdresser. She was an absolute dote. Nadia was just 2.5 years old, and her personality was just coming into play. She had just been diagnosed with a form of autism, and Sharon was taking steps to get the help she needed. Sharon never missed an appointment, always making sure her girls were looked after, just like what was done for her growing up. The best of everything. She moved into the farmhouse to be close to her parents to get the support she needed as a single mother. Her parents were on hand at every turn, and so she was never without help. It was new beginnings for her and the girls, and life was coming together for her. Sharon was a big fan of Christmas, and in 2008 it was no different. On Christmas Eve, tree was up, presents wrapped, underneath, and arrangements made to spend the day with her parents, and looking forward to Stephen's day, when all the family came together, brothers, sisters, nieces, and nephews. But this was not to be. Unknown to Sharon and the girls, on that Christmas Eve night, Sharon would tuck and kiss them goodnight for the last time. A murderer would visit them and not Santa. Earlier that day, she spoke to her mother on the phone and was all excited to tell her that she got everything she wanted for the girls and whispered, I even got all my bills paid and I even have a little money left over. Her man was so proud of her. They discussed their arrangements for the next day and said their goodbyes. On a side note, if anyone knows an Irish mammy's goodbye, it usually consists of half the duration of the call. When the children were put to bed that night and were sound asleep, Sharon rang her dad to tell him the coast was clear and to bring down Zara and Nadia's Santa presents, which he was keeping safe in his house. Her dad drove to the house at around 11 p.m., parking a distance away so as not to wake the girls. Sharon greeted her dad in the yard and the Santa presents were handed over. He said his goodbyes and would see her and the girls in the morning to collect them for Mass. Sharon went back inside, locked her door, put the presents under the tree, and settled in for the night. This same night, a man was having a different kind of night. He worked that day and went drinking with his friends in the city of Kilkenny, later returning to his local pub in Windgap to continue his day of binge drinking. As the night drew to a close, he announced to his friends, I'm off to get a shag. This man took the 20-minute walk down a long, dark, lonely road to Sharon's house, where he knew a vulnerable woman and her two children lived. He had plenty of time to change his mind and go home, but he didn't. As he approached the house at around 1:30 a.m., it was in darkness. He broke into the house and attacked Sharon in the living room. He forced himself on Sharon and strangled her while her little girls slept in the back bedroom. He dragged her lifeless body into where the girls slept and put a blanket over her. He spent the next few hours in the house deciding what to do next, and what he decided to do was inconceivable. The only way out of what he had just done was to set fire to the house and take the lives of the two little girls to cover his tracks. He then left the house and took himself home and slept. Later that morning, two neighbors saw the smoke coming from the farmhouse. The neighbors tried to access the house through the front door, but the flames were too high. So they ran to the back of the house and through a rear window took the girls out. But they were too late. The girls and their mother were dead. The fire service arrived along with the Gardaí, and the area was sealed off for inspection. Detective Brian Murphy and Detective Sergeant Jim Ling arrived at the farmhouse, and on their initial questioning of the two men that recovered the bodies, it was noted that Sharon's body was much stiffer than the girls'. This immediately raised alarm bells. This fire may not have been an accident. Their bodies were removed to the coroner's office. Dr. Mary Cassidy, the state pathologist, had conducted a post-mortem on all three bodies. The two girls, Zara and Nadine, had both died from smoke inhalation and had no injuries to their bodies. Their mother, Sharon, had no smoke in her lungs, and it was determined that she died from strangulation. The most significant finding on her body were marks around her neck, and the neckline had been compressed, consistent with manual strangulation. Dr. Cassidy said there was also marks indicating a forcible attempt at penetration. She said she may have been strangled during the act, and it was possible the neck of her nitress had been pulled tight on her neck. Finally, she stated that it could not be excluded that penetration had occurred after death also. This report confirmed what the Gardaí already suspected. A murder inquiry began and questions were asked. Who, why, and most importantly, was it a stranger or someone they had known? The first people to be questioned were the family, to establish who Sharon was and who her circle of friends were, and if anyone would want to hurt Sharon. The men from the locality were questioned and DNA was collected. Ears were to the ground for any information that would help with discovering who did this heinous crime. The small community wanted these murders solved as quickly as possible. From the information that was collected, it was soon clear that the murderer was among them, and in such a small community, this was as shocking as the murders. As the information was being collected and interviews being carried out, and waiting on DNA results, one name kept coming up: Brian Hennessy, a 23-year-old man who was born and raised in Windgap. He had given his DNA voluntarily and was interviewed by the Gardaí. He was well known in the area and his family were acquainted with the Whelan family. A quiet man that lived at home with his mother, and he had a girlfriend. He worked as a temporary local postman. He would have only known Sharon in passing, but would have known she lived on her own with her two girls. Hennessy had been asking questions that no one else was asking. He wanted to know, had the fire spread to the back of the house? Had the roof collapsed on the bedroom where the bodies were found? People were getting suspicious of him, and the Gardaí were informed. A week later, when Sharon and the girls were laid to rest on New Year's Day, he even went to the funeral. Finally, the DNA results were in, and they were a match to Hennessy. On the 15th of January 2009, they finally arrested him at his home. At Hennessy's first interview, he had to come up with a story, and a story it would be, changing constantly as the Gardaí revealed more and more of their evidence to Hennessy. Hennessy was cool, calm, and collected. He at first denied knowing Sharon at all and wouldn't relent on this. Finally, he admitted he had only known Sharon in passing. He told Gardaí that on Christmas Eve he had been working and afterwards went out drinking and had gone straight home from his local pub. When the Gardaí told him that they had interviewed his mother and she had said she had let him in at 7 that morning, the story changed. He said he had left his coat in the pub and had gone back for it. The Gardaí weren't buying it. They questioned his timeline and knew it would not take him that long to go home, go back to the pub to retrieve his coat and walk the distance home again. Once the Gardaí presented him with the DNA, Hennessy only then started to show signs of pressure. Up to then, his demeanour had been as before, cool, calm, and unfazed, but the cracks were starting to show. Finally, he admitted that he had been to the house that night and that Sharon had invited him up. He said that they had consensual intercourse, but that he didn't kill her. Later on, in another interview, he finally admitted to strangling Sharon when she threatened to tell his girlfriend that they had intercourse. When asked about the fire, he said he didn't know what to do and spent the next few hours in the house while the girls slept, with their mother dead at their feet. He decided to set the fire to burn the evidence. He knew the children were there but didn't think about it. He only thought about the murder and covering his tracks. When the house was ablaze, he walked home, his mother let him in, and he went to sleep on the couch. When he awoke, he had Christmas dinner with his family and in the evening went to his girlfriend's house as if nothing happened. Even though admitting to all this during Garda questioning and having been charged with murder, he still wouldn't plead guilty. On the 11th hour, on the morning of the trial on the 17th of November 2009, he finally pleaded guilty to the three murders, but the forced intercourse charge was dropped. The judge handed down three mandatory life sentences. Two were to run concurrently, which were for Sharon's daughters, and Sharon's to run consecutively. Hennessy should at least spend 30 years in jail. This was unprecedented in the Irish justice system. In 2010, Hennessy appealed his sentence and won. His sentence was reduced to 3 life sentences to run concurrently. This means that he is serving 1 life sentence for all 3 of the murders. After the success of the appeal, the Whelan family would be entering into a new fight, a fight against the Irish justice system to keep Hennessy in prison. According to Irish law, the life sentence is referred to the offender's life, and because he has only 1 life, then only 1 life sentence can be handed down, no matter how many lives that person takes. Politicians are the lawmakers of our country, and our judges are not allowed for discretion when it comes to sentencing. Their hands are tied. So when Hennessy appealed his sentence, it reverted back to Irish law and he was successful. Also at the time, an offender could apply for parole after 7 years. So Hennessy had his parole hearing after the 7 years and was denied a year and a half later. The families of the victims could not attend the hearing, but could write a letter stating why Hennessy should not be released. They discovered that this letter would be sent to Hennessy prior to the hearing. This again caused terrible anguish to the Whelan family. In August 2019, a new bill was passed, changing the application for parole from 7 years to 12 years. Hennessy applied for a second time in late 2021, and as of today, the hearing has not yet been granted. The average life sentence in Ireland is 20 years for a lifer, and so Hennessy has spent the last 12 years in prison, but may only serve another 8 years. He can also apply for parole every 3 to 4 years until he gets out, which puts the victim's family through more. To add insult to injury, when he gets out, he will not be put on the offenders list, as the forced intercourse charges were dropped. There's no happy ending to this story, and nothing to be learned. People will do what they want, when they want, and with who they want, despite the consequences. A mother's life was lost, along with her 2 beautiful children. A family lost their daughter, granddaughter, sister, nieces, and cousins, all because this man decided just that. I went to school with Sharon's brother John and grew up with him in the village. I remember Sharon and her siblings Linda and David coming to live in the village as children, with their beautiful faces, snow white hair, and I can really say they were like 3 little angels, and they were so loved by their new family.
Okay, one more and we're done, I promise. Here, it's coming up right now, baby cakes. I'm sure everybody has seen this, but everybody also loves it. Yeah.
I'll get you, bitch. I'll get you, bitch. I'll get you, bitch. So the gate guy.
Never heard of the Emu War.
It's a real taste, as you're gonna tell from his reaction. It won't be that much of
5 seconds.
We are.
We'll be careful.
Please don't do this. No, no, no.
I'd cover your cock, dude. Shoot my cock. Dude, I'm not gonna shoot your cock.
I'm gonna watch on the.
I'm not gonna shoot your cock. 5, 4, 3. No. That's a fucking right nut. Oh, God damn. I'm a fucking nut, dude. Like, in the fucking seat.
3 for you. Yeah, turn around. Okay, just turn around. I'm not gonna do it yet. Bend over a little. Are you guys ready? Are you ready? I'm gonna count to 3.
Okay.
Ready?
I'm 3. Okay.
I'm 3.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
1.
I'm not going to do it all day. Right now, you're under arrest. Anything you do is felony. Hold me down. Put your hands behind your back. Hands behind my back. Relax. Don't do it. Don't do it. Put your right hand behind you. Put his hand behind your back now. Do it, do it! Ah! Get down! Get down! On the ground!
Oh shit! Oh my god!
Shoot his ass.
Get him again! Holy sh! Holy crap, dude!
No one go outside. Do not go outside.
Lock the doors if anything. Holy crap, he's still going.
Alright. This is taser test number 1. Hopefully there's not a fucking number 2 on me at least. But let's get rolling. You ready? Yeah. Alright. I want to see the prongs actually sticking to my skin.
Oh God.
Hopefully these earrings will be alright. They should. They should.
That's all the metal from your body?
Huh?
That's all the metal?
Yeah, these, I think they should be together. They're just a little bit of fucking metal.
You ready?
I think so.
Alright. Let's go 1, 2,
Quick.
3.
Oh my god.
It fucked you up?
That hurts so bad.
Get down on your knees. Get down. Get down. I got that. Dude, nobody wants to hurt you. Do as you're told. You're under arrest. Drop the smoke. For what? Intoxication. Drop the smoke. Drop it. You're under arrest. Drop it. You're under arrest. It's all over. That's it. You're done for the night. You're under arrest. Yell in the morning. Okay? You're under arrest right now. You don't want to add criminal charges to it. Just deal with this. Okay? You're on a timeout now, man. You want to go in? Calm down and bail later on. He's grabbing it. Dude, now. Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Stop. Get on your knees. Get on your knees. Taser! Taser! Go! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get down! Get down! Stop resisting! Stop! Put your hand behind your back. Do it now. Do it now.
Only in fucking Harlem. And he from my block. Hey! Oh! Oh shit! Watch out! Watch out! Hey! Oh, hey! Call him on the Hey! Hey!
Hey, Tawny.
Jeremy, don't yell at my motherfucking baby. She's not inside this regular ass mall. So you not finna yell at her. The fuck about you looking over there? But you hear what I'm saying to your pussy ass. Don't motherfucking yell at some bitch. Don't yell at my motherfucking ass.
Back it up. Back it up. Back it up.
A few moments later.
Get your kids. Get your children. Get your children. Get your children. Get your children. You better get up. You better back it up. You better back it up. Back it up. You better back.
The matter with you? The matter with you?
And that's that. Well, I thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as it stands right now, we might do this again Sunday. So, but I'll let you know. Thank you once again, and you all have a great rest of your day. It's probably my fault, Joshua. My ISP is sucks. Or not my ISP, my internet provider. You're welcome, Shelley.